The Pentagon was already working on these AI censorship superweapons to stop ISIS. This was a technique called natural language processing, which is this ability to basically scan the entire internet, all tweets, all Facebook posts, all YouTube videos, because everything we say on YouTube since 2009 or whatnot has gone into closed captioning at YouTube. So there's a transcript. Well, the AI can read that transcript and it can scan for keywords, pre-crime analysis, whether or not you support or oppose the thing you're talking about. You can only turn your knob up so much on your own propaganda before people go, that hurts my ears. I don't trust this. So this new tool had to be developed to turn down the opposition. So there was no way to create a sort of robust political thought leadership, to spread narratives, to circulate potentially damning or humiliating diplomatic incidents that can be exploited for political purposes. We needed a censorship mechanism at the technological level, and we needed a censorship ecosystem of personnel who could back channel between the tech companies and the blob, the diplomatic defense intelligence apparatus. And so these were both developed effectively in tandem in 2014. The Pentagon was already working on these AI censorship superweapons to stop ISIS. This was a technique called natural language processing, which is this ability to basically scan the entire internet, all tweets, all Facebook posts, all YouTube videos, because everything we say on YouTube since 2009 or whatnot has gone into closed captioning at YouTube. So there's a transcript. Well, the AI can read that transcript and it can scan for keywords, and they can do sentiment analysis to evaluate through essentially AI pre-crime analysis whether or not you support or oppose the thing you're talking about, or whether you're talking about something that's sensitive from NATO's perspective. Some Ukrainian oligarch who's on, CIA payroll does something embarrassing, and Russian YouTube videos or Facebook posts or tweets are amplifying that. Well, that can all be turned down so that nobody knows about the story because the AI is now reading it. They developed that in the counterterrorism space because if you recall, beginning in 2014 in the US, there was this threat of homegrown ISIS threats. There began to be these terrorist attacks like the Garland attack in Texas, which turned out to have its own quite peculiar elements. But there was this threat that Americans may be being recruited on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter by ISIS propagandists. So we needed a technique to be able to scan the internet for all pro-ISIS phraseology, the terms they use, the prefixes, the suffixes, the slang, the hashtags. And so that began to be coordinated out of something called a newly set up wing of the U.S. State Department, really its first ever formal censorship subdivision. It was called the Global Engagement Center. And I bring this up because it plays into the story later on here. And this was set up by a guy named Rick Stengel, who was the Undersecretary for Public Affairs, bragged that he was Obama's chief propagandist. It's basically the interstitial between state propaganda from the U.S. State Department and the media. And they began to use these technologies to scan and ban ISIS. But then after the Crimea incident, this began to be all sort of Russian propaganda. But then anytime a populist candidate began to win or gain popularity in Europe, they said Marine Le Pen is advantaging Russia with the plank she's running on. She wants to get rid of the U.S. sanctions on Russian energy, so we can scan and ban for all sentiment that supports Marine Le Pen, as well as any U.S. citizens who amplify Marine Le Pen in the U.S. and give her political support there. So everyone get caught in the crossfire of this, effectively military complex that was bent on achieving its goals.
How exactly are we influencing all these other countries to jump on board with this?
A number of means. So,
do they know that we're influencing them?
Well, certainly the connective touch points certainly do, because I'll give you an example, Brazil. So Brazil has this tyrant judge, de Moraes, right? This is the current war between Elon and this, the head of Brazil's censorship court. It's called the TSE. It's a subcourt of Brazil's Supreme Court, the STF. And so a lot of people see the actions of this one tyrant judge who basically has this ability to issue an edict, and then anything posted online becomes instantly criminal. Sitting parliamentarians in Brazil call the current president, Lula, a thief. And the judge says, you're not allowed to say that. The person faces, a criminal judgment for demeaning the current president. Going after journalists, going after politicians, going after ordinary civilians by any edict. But there's a whole censorship substructure to what Demores is involved in. There's advisory councils. There's a whole coterie of flaggers who propose the things to be flagged, who do the technical work of the sort of AI scanning, who do the narrative network mapping. If they want to say anyone who challenges the results of Brazil's 2022 election, well, they need these outside institutions to create this whole narrative network map. Well, these are U.S. funded and U.S. backed channel institutions who provide the entire substructure to the head of the snake. The analogy that I've been giving on this is it's a Brazilian spider, but the spider web was laid by the U.S. State Department, USAID, the National Endowment for Democracy. I can go through all their roles. And the fangs of it are star-spangled spangs. This is the U.S. the U.S. State Department trying to take out its political opposition in Brazil. They went to war with Bolsonaro. They called him Trump of the tropics. They're waging the same campaign against Bolsonaro that they did through their own intermediaries to take out Trump during his term, to censor him on the internet there, and that they're using to censor Trump today through their work with the EU. They're just doing that in Brazil to stop Bolsonaro. This story goes back at least 6 years to the U.S. State Department's involvement in censoring Brazil. So almost all Bolsonaro supporters in the run-up to the 2018 Brazilian election, were deemed to be populists by the U.S. State Department. Populism, again, is this watchword where this Department of Dirty Tricks power that I laid out all hinges on this word democracy. We have this concept that democracy is this set of democratic institutions, and that if the popular will opposes these democratic institutions, we call that an attack on democracy, because even if the people want it, it still violates these safeguards that are held in place. This is how we say, we don't let another Adolf Hitler rise to power, is because we don't allow demagogues appealing to the masses to take democracy outside of the bumper cars of the bowling lane. And so this is our sort of special set of skills the blob has. If we can't get them on terrorism grounds or military grounds, this is part of how we waged the Cold War. Communism, even if a country was minding its own business, we said that, well, it's a communist structure that's depriving the people of their yearnings for democracy. And so we get to play God. We get to use our CIA and our State Department and our USAID and our paramilitary back channels to do a top-down military coup, as we did in Brazil in 1964, or a bottom-up color revolution, as we did in Ukraine in 2014 and dozens of other countries. But populism is the new communism. Populism is the new counterterrorism. This is something I think that a lot of conservatives who may be listening really need to process, because this CIA, State Department, USAID military apparatus had the support of the Republican Party throughout the entire 20th century as it was toppling left-wing socialist, left-wing communist governments. It was not until Trump won in 2016, or Brexit 4 or 5 months before that, and then the rise around the world of these right-wing populist politicians, from Abe in Japan to Modi in India to Bolsonaro in Brazil to that whole European axis I laid out that stretches all the way from France into the Baltics, that there became this flip. The CIA, the State Department, they still oppose left-wing socialism, communism, but the biggest threat that they see is right-wing populism. Neoliberalism, the blob's sort of financial motto, can be flanked from either side, from its left-wing socialist flank or from its right-wing nationalist flank. And so this is why they went after Bolsonaro and tried to stop him from winning in 2018. Bolsonaro supporters were censored on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all the major platforms between 2017 and 2018. So they started to take to end-to-end encrypted chats in order to circumvent that censorship.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.